Hi, this is Mike Green, and this is
Realivox, Realivox, Realivox Blue.
I don't think it's too often that an instrument introduces itself. Now in this video, we're going to walk through all the various features of Realivox Blue so you can get a better idea of what exactly she can do. Let's start with the word builder since that's the most obvious thing on the screen. Let's make a word. In fact, let's do something really basic. Let's do ooh. First thing we do is hit this reset button to clear everything. Now you'll notice some buttons are lit while others are dark. If a button is lit, then that means it's available. If it's dark, then that means it's not available. Here's ooh right here in the vowel section, and look at this, it's lit, ready for us to click. Presto! Right up here at the top, it tells us that ooh is loaded and ready to play. It works! I'll turn off legato so we can play chords. Or I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but we can turn on polyphonic legato. Or we can really get ahead of ourselves and turn on voices 2 and 3 to triple the voices. It's fun to play, but let's get back to the task at hand. I'll turn off polylegato, and we'll turn off voices 2 and 3, and now we're back to the word builder. Now you may have noticed that when I clicked ooh, all of the start consonants went dark, and now all the end consonants are available. So we could put an ending consonant on here. Let's do SH. Now you may be noticing that there are still some ending consonants available. We could add T to this. Finally, your search for a library that can sing oosht is over. Now, I want to show you how we recorded and then edited these samples. Here's a Pro Tools session, and here on this top line is a recording of cease.
Cease.
And here is sus.
Sus.
You can see that we've split these audio files into the starting S, then the vowel, then the closing part of the vowel, which we'll get to in a minute, and then the ending S. All simple enough, but here's something that we learned. An S, or any consonant for that matter, sounds different depending on what vowel it's going into. Check it out. Here's C with the correct S.
C.
And now I'll replace the correct S with the S from the SU.
C.
Your ear can tell that the S was done with her mouth in the OO position even though it's supposed to be C.
C. C.
It's not terrible, but your ear knows it's not quite right. Let's hear it again with the correct S.
C.
It's a subtle difference, but it's definitely there. So we had to sample complete sets of consonants for each of the vowels, and not just for S. Same thing happens with K or T or any of them. You go ki, ku, k, ku, k, ku. But that's not all. Here's something else we learned. See here at the end of the vowel? We actually edited separate endings for each of the vowel leading into each of the consonants, because the vowels close in different ways depending on what consonant they're leading into. Here's an example with ebe with an ending of B.
Beep.
Now I'm going to mute the B, the consonant part, so you can hear just how the vowel closes.
Beep. Beep.
Now let's listen to ease with the S muted so we can hear how the same E vowel closes when it's leading into a different consonant.
Beep. Beep.
Let's compare that with ebe again. It's pretty easy to hear the difference, and if I zoom in, you can even see the difference in the shape of how these vowels close. So we can't just slap a consonant at the end, we have to actually close the vowel to make it sound right. With all the vowel and consonant combinations, it's a whole lot of samples, not to mention the scripting to make it all work. This is one of the reasons why this project took so long. Okay, enough of my whining about the work we had to do. Let's make a new word, but this time with starting consonants. Let's do street. We'll do S, then T, then R, then E for our vowel, and then T.
Street, street, street.
Sounds close, but here's a funny thing about making words. The T into the R shouldn't really be a T into an R. TR is its own sound, tr, instead of tr. So we have that option here. I'll reset and we'll do this again, this time with S, and then TR instead of a separate T and R, and then E, and then T.
Street, 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 street.
See, it sounds more real. Now that's the kind of attention to detail you've come to expect from your good friends at Realitone. Okay, so let's add another syllable by clicking on the cleverly named Next Syllable button. Let's do car. Now car is going to start with a K, not a C. Then the vowel will be ah, and we'll end with R.
Street car.
Notice that it automatically moves to the next syllable as I release each note.
Street car, street car.
We could turn on vowel legato, and this time it will advance to the next syllable as we finish each phrase.
Street car.
The same thing will happen even with polyphonic legato.
Street car.
Or if we turn on phrase legato, then it's still a legato, but it advances the syllables as we play overlapping notes.
Street car, street car, street car.
Phrase legato is what you'll typically want when you're doing lyrics, but streetcar is probably not the most musical example I could have picked, so let's try something more lyrical. Let's do O Come, Emmanuel. It's an English translation of a Latin poem. Now, first we'll hit reset, and then we'll select O, and then next syllable, then K to Now, there's an M, O come, but I'm actually going to put the M at the beginning of the next syllable. It will sing a little bit better. O come. It just works better. So then we'll do M, and then O, next syllable, K, then next syllable, that's come, but I'm going to put the me at the next one. So we'll do M, then E, then M, E, N, then Y, U, then E, and then L. And I'll turn on the phrase legato switch, so if we play with overlapping notes, it'll sound like a phrase. You can think of it as phrase legato glues the syllables together.
O come, Emmanuel.
Cool. Now, if we want to add little flourishes, we can go to vowel legato for any syllables we want to linger on, then back to phrase legato to move on to the next syllables. We have key switches for this, so we can do it on the fly. This F sharp is for vowel legato. The G sharp is phrase legato. If you forget, we have them indicated here on this key switch keyboard: vowel on F sharp, phrase on G sharp, and polylegato on A sharp. Anyway, let's try this phrase with little flourishes on some of the vowels.
O come, Emmanuel.
Cool, right? Now, before we move to the second line, let's save this first line to a key switch. If we look at this key switch guide here, we can see which key switches are available. The only key switches already taken are these on the low C and D, which have the Realivox Blue phrase that we heard at the beginning of this video. So let's save this phrase on this C key switch. I just press the key, presto. Now this line can be recalled anytime. Okay, so now we're ready for the second line, and ransom captive Israel. We'll start with reset to clear the line. Now we'll do and ransom. So and, we're going to have to do and ransom. So we'll do N, D, and then ransom, R, N, S, M, and then captive, we're going to have to do captev. So we'll do K, A, P, T, E, V, and then Israel. E, S, R, A, Y, E, L.
En ransom captive Israel. En ransom captive Israel.
Sounds pretty good, but you can hear where we had to compromise on some of the vowels. I did this line on purpose with this video because there are some limitations on what Realivox Blue can do, and I want to make sure everyone is clear on that. We've got just about all the possible consonants here, but we did have to compromise on which vowels we included. The vowels here were chosen because they work well for Latin or a lot of ethnic phrases, which was actually the original purpose of this library. And even with English, there's a lot she can sing. But there's also a lot that she can't. So if you're planning on doing a bunch of Katy Perry songs, then I hate to tell someone not to buy this, but, well, maybe you shouldn't buy this. Don't get me wrong. I believe Realivox Blue does a lot of things really, really well. And I love her voice. But we're not quite to the stage where computers are going to put singers completely out of work. Anyway, enough disclaimers. Let's do a couple quickies while we're still here on the word builder. First, we'll save this line to a key switch. I'll put it on this D. So now, let's hit reset, and let's do I love you, baby. I will do E for I. That's E. And then love, V. You. And B, E, B.
I love you, baby. I love you, baby.
I got a call a little while ago from a friend of mine who's trying to do the words, will you love me? It's easy enough to put that into the word builder. We'll start with W, then E. That's the closest that we have to I. It's wheel, and then L. Then next syllable, Y. Oo. Next syllable, L. V. And then M, E. Simple enough.
Will you love me?
The problem that he was having was that when he played it with the metronome, it wasn't in sync.
Will you love me? Will you love me?
You can see how the notes are quantized, so he was expecting them to play in sync, but they didn't. Well, the reason for that is that when you go from word to word, there's actually a lot of things that have to happen. When you go from will to you, when you play that note for you, it doesn't start the oo right away. Instead, it says, okay, you want to end the will, so it's got to go ill, and it's got to go into the Y before it even gets to the oo. So it's will you, so you actually have to play that U a little bit ahead of the beat. Same thing with love. We have to play it a little bit ahead so that the L has time to develop. And with me as well. You have to play the me ahead of the beat so that it can finish the of, and then the M can go me to get into the beat. So let's listen to it quantized once again.
Will you love me? Will you love me?
And now I'll move these syllables up, maybe just about half a beat or so. Okay, let's hear how it sounds now.
Will you love me? Will you love me?
Sounds better, right? It's something that you want to think about as you're playing words. If you're doing words that start with hard consonants like B or D or K or T, then you can pretty much play on the beat. But if you're doing S's or F's or L's or M's or any of the slower consonants, then you need to anticipate a little bit. So, moving on, you don't always have to do real words. A lot of times, especially if you're doing film scores, you just want it to sound like words, but it doesn't necessarily have to be real words. So I'll try that here with Rome and tush. It's just a couple of nonsense words. I could get more sophisticated with more syllables, but this is just a quick example. I add some delay to this, and we'll pull up a low string drone, and then I'll play a little Arabic scale, and here we go. styles can be almost anything you want. We can do haunting like what we just did, or we could even do jazzy. I'll pull up something really basic. We'll just do do.
do 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 do.
Now over here on the right hand side, you can see that we have a column labeled special, and here we have special articulations. There's bomb,
Bum 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 bum
or another articulation that we have is airy ha, which is this breathy kind of ha sound specifically for all the people who keep emailing me wanting me to give them a sound that they can use for the How to Train Your Dragon cue. We could spend all day making words and whatnot, but let's move on. Over here you can see where it says repeat on this B key, which is the same as down here on the virtual keyboard. You can see this red key. It's the repeat key. And here's what that's for. Let's suppose that we want to play a phrase. I'll load up the Realivox again with this low C key switch. You can see now it says Realivox up here. Let's play this and let's pretend that we want it to stay on this one key, on this G, and we want it to stay connected, but we can't connect it because it's just one key.
Realivox, Realivox,
So to get around that, we hit this B key, which repeats whatever the last note we played was. So if we wanted to play a connected line on the same note,
Realivox, Realivox.
then this repeat key is a way of playing the same note. Now here you can also see that we've got the indicators for the vowel legato, phrase legato, and polyphonic legato, because those are key switches as well, which means that if I hit this F sharp, then it turns on vowel legato. If I hit the G sharp, it turns on phrase legato. And if I hit the A sharp, or B flat, then it turns on polyphonic legato. Now if I want to turn legato off completely, then I just hit two keys at the same time, and that turns it off. So we've got F sharp vowel, G sharp phrase, A sharp polyphonic legato, and then I'll hit two or even three keys at once, turns legato off completely. And then here we've got the shift keys that trigger alternate samples. They basically work by neighbor borrowing. So if we, let's set up do, and now if we play this same G over and over again, we don't want to trigger exactly the same sample. So I'm going to hit the shift key. If I'm holding a shift key when I play the do, then it will trigger a different sample.
Do 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 do.
It's useful for situations where you want round robin, or maybe there's a sample that you just don't like for one reason or another, and you just want to trigger an alternate sample for just that one note. Moving on, we've got this expression knob. The knob is really just an indicator for CC11 for expression. It's the slick way to control dynamics or volume. Now, if you want to use a controller besides CC11, then you just right-click on the knob. This is true for any knob, by the way. But you just right-click on the knob and then select whatever controller number you like, and away you go. So now we're ready to take a look at one of my favorite parts of Realivox Blue, and that's the voices. I'm going to put this back to an ooh. And now we can add additional voices so that we double and then triple. It saves you the trouble of having to set up separate tracks for doubles or triples. Now let's click on the settings page, and here we can see the various controls that we have for the three voices. The first is a detune if you want a slightly sharp or slightly flat for any of the voices. This is in cents. And then there's a delay settings here, and this is so that they don't have to be perfectly in sync. This is in milliseconds, so maybe you want voice 2 to be, in this case I've got it at 15 milliseconds after the first voice plays, and then the third voice is 25, but you can set them whatever you want. And then of course pan is obvious, volume. In this case, I have them all three set to be the same volume, but if I move the volume of voices 2 and 3 to be quite a bit lower, then rather than getting an ensemble kind of effect, I have more of a doubling kind of effect. If you were doing like a pop song or something like that, where you just kind of want to thicken the voice, as opposed to making it sound like it's really three different singers. Now, at the bottom here, is the most interesting of the controls, and that's the voice itself. For voice 1, I'm going to turn off voice 2 and voice 3 so that you can hear better exactly what these things do. Right now, I have voice 1 is set to normal, and that's just normal. You're just playing the samples exactly as they were recorded. But if I set this to dark 1, then what you're going to hear are the samples that are a half step sharp, and then they're pitched down the half step in order to sound in key. It's basically neighbor borrowing. Bright 1 does a similar idea. It takes the notes that are a half step below and then pitches them up a half step. Or we could go to bright 2, which takes it a little bit further. Or even bright 12, which is a full octave of shift. Obviously, if you want to stay more real, then you want to stay like bright 1, bright 2, or dark 1, dark 2. But a lot of times if you go to the more extreme settings, though, not all the way to 12 maybe, but like 3, 4, or 5, then that will thicken things out. It will actually give the voice a pretty different timbre. Soloed, of course, it sounds a little bit odd, but when you're mixing it in with multiple voices, you'd be surprised how effective that can be. Now, one thing that I want to point out is that if you're going to have voices 2 and 3 on, then you don't want to have 2 voices or 3 voices that have the same voice setting. You want all 3 to be different. Otherwise, you're going to get phasing because you're going to be triggering the same samples. And if I want to bring any of the knobs or sliders or buttons or whatever back to the Realitone factory settings, then just Control-click if you're on Windows or Apple-click if you're on a Mac, and that restores to the default settings. So if you get too crazy with any experimenting, then you can always get back to where you were pretty easily. Over here, we've got the attack and release knobs. This only works on the vowel sounds. It doesn't slow down the attack of consonants or anything like that. But let's turn these up to somewhere around 70. And then, of course, to bring the controls back to where they were, I'll just Control-click or Command-click. Next, let's look at the vibrato settings. Vibrato, of course, is brought in with the modulation wheel. You've got a speed control, which is pretty obvious, but what's the interesting one here is the amplitude and pitch knob. This determines whether the vibrato is mostly going to be a volume or amplitude vibrato, or whether the vibrato is going to be pitch. Now, as you might guess, the best vibrato is actually a mix of the two, a little heavier on the pitch side. We put a lot of research into this, by the way, not just in the amplitude and pitch combination, but also in the actual curve of what her voice does in a vibrato. This is not just a sine wave. We actually drew this thing out. But I'm sure you're tired of hearing my never-ending tales of how much work we put into this. So let's move on. We have the reverb controls here, which I don't think require a whole lot of explanation. But I will mention that this is an algorithmic reverb, which uses very little CPU. It's not a convolution reverb or anything like that. And I actually think it sounds pretty good. You'll probably want to use your own reverb if you're going to get serious about this because it is vocals. But we include it on here because I think it makes the instrument more fun to play out of the box. And finally, we'll get to one of my very favorite parts of Realivox Blue, and that is the polyphonic legato feature. You'll see that there's only one knob here. That's the release time window. The way that the polyphonic legato works is that when you release a note, you have this amount of time, in this case 210 milliseconds, to play your next note if you want it to be legato. So polyphonic legato works based on releasing notes, then playing a new note quickly, as opposed to regular legato, or vowel or phrase legato, which work based on playing overlapping notes. You can do this playing one note at a time, or 2 notes at a time. You can actually play any number of notes you want. Here's 3 notes. Best of all, you can do this in any combination you want. You can be holding some of the notes while other notes are moving, and then have the different notes moving. It really is a lot of fun to play, especially because you know what I'm going to do next. We're going to turn on voices 2 and 3 to give us a choir kind of an effect, and this is all just played on one track. So I hope that gives you an idea of what Realivox Blue is all about. I know this video is a little bit long, but we had a lot to show you. For more details, go to our website at realitone.com, and you can always visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/realitone. Thank you for watching.